time of the writing of The Books of Enoch, a complete volume containing 1 Enoch, the Ethiopic Book of Enoch, 2 Enoch, the Slavonic Secrets of Enoch, 3 Enoch, the Hebrew Book of Enoch, written by Joseph B. Lumpkin, narrated by Dennis Logan. Introduction. The study of Scripture is a lifelong venture. Many times our search for deeper understanding of the holy books leads to questions beyond the Bible itself. As we encounter references to social conditions, cultural practices, and even other writings mentioned within the Scriptures, we are called to investigate and expand our knowledge in order to fully appreciate the context, knowledge base, and cultural significance of what is being taught. Thus, to fully understand the Bible, we are necessarily drawn to sources outside the Bible. These sources add to the historical, social, or theological understanding of biblical times. As our view becomes more macrocosmic, we see the panoramic setting and further understand the full truth within the Scriptures. To point us to the sources we should be concerned with, we must know which books were popular and important at the time of the writing of various books of the Bible. There are several books mentioned in the Bible which are not included in the Bible. They are not spiritual canon, either because they were not available at the time the canon was originally adopted, or at the time they were not considered inspired. In cases when inspiration was questioned, one could argue that any book quoted or mentioned by a prophet or an apostle should be considered a spiritual canon. Unfortunately, this position would prove too simplistic. Books and writings can fall under various categories, such as civil records and laws, historical documents, or spiritual writings. A city or state census is not inspired, but it could add insight into certain areas of life. Spiritual writings, which are directly quoted in the Bible, serve as insights into the beliefs of the writer, or what was considered acceptable by society at the time. As with any new discovery, invention, or belief, the new is interpreted based upon the structure of what came before. This was the way in the first century Christian church, as beliefs were based upon the old Jewish understanding. Although one should realize pagan beliefs were also added to the church as non-Jewish populations were converted, bringing with them the foundations of their beliefs on which they interpreted Christianity. In the case of Jude, James, Paul, and others, the Jewish past was giving way to the Christian present, but their understanding and doctrine were still being influenced by what they had learned and experienced previously. It becomes obvious that to understand the Bible, one should endeavor to investigate the books and doctrines that most influenced the writers of the Bible. The Dead Sea Scrolls found in the caves of Qumran are of great interest in the venture of clarifying the history and doctrine in existence between biblical times and the fixing of canon. Many of the scrolls were penned in the 2nd century BC and were in use at least until the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. Similar scrolls to those found in the 11 caves of Qumran were also found at the Masada stronghold, which fell in 73 AD. Fragments of every book of the Old Testament, except Esther, were found in the caves of Qumran, but so were many other books. Some of these books are considered to have been of equal importance and influence to the people of Qumran and to the writers and scholars of the time. Some of those studying the scrolls found in Qumran were the writers of the New Testament. Knowing this, one might ask which of the dozens of non-canonical books most influenced the writers of the New Testament. It is except Esther were found in the caves of Qumran, but so were many other books. Some of these books are considered to have been of equal importance and influence to the people of Qumran and to the writers and scholars of the time. Some of those studying the scrolls found in Qumran were the writers of the New Testament. Knowing this, one might ask which of the dozens of non-canonical books most influenced the writers of the New Testament. It is possible to ascertain the existence of certain influences within the Bible context by using the Bible itself. The Bible can direct us to other works in three ways. The work can be mentioned by name, as is the book of Jasher. The work can be quoted within the Bible text, as is the case with the book of Enoch. The existence of the work can be alluded to, as is the case of the missing letter from the Apostle Paul to the Corinthians. In the case of those books named in the Bible, one can set a list as the titles are named. The list is lengthier than one might first suspect. Most of these works have not been found. Some have been unearthed, but their authenticity is questioned. Others have been found, and the link between scripture and scroll is generally accepted. Following is a list of books mentioned in the Holy Bible. The book of Jasher. There are two references to the book in the Old Testament. 2 Samuel 1:18. Also he bade them teach the children of Judah the use of the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. Joshua 10:13. Is it not written in the book of Jasher? And the sun stopped in the middle of the sky, and did not hasten to go down for about a whole day. There are several books which have come to us entitled Book of Jasher. One is an ethical treatise from the Middle Ages. It begins with a section on the mystery of the creation of the world. It is clearly unrelated to the biblical Book of Jasher. Another was published in 1829, supposedly translated by Flaccus Albinus Alcuinus. It opens with the chapter 1, verse 1 reading, "While it was the beginning, darkness overspread the face of nature." It is now considered a fake. The third and most important is by Midrash, first translated into English in 1840. It opens with chapter 1, verse 1 reading, "And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And God created man in his own image." A comparison of Joshua 10:13 with Jasher 88:63-64, and 2 Samuel 1:18 with Jasher 56:9 makes it clear that this book of Jasher at least follows close enough with the Bible to be the book of Jasher mentioned in the Bible. A translation of the book of Jasher is available from Joseph Lumpkin, published by Fifth Estate. Other books mentioned by name in the Bible are the Book of Wars of the Lord. Therefore it is said in the Book of the Wars of the Lord, Numbers 21:14. The Annals of Jehu. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoshaphat, first to last, behold, they are written in the Annals of Jehu, the son of Hanani, which is recorded in the book of the kings of Israel. 2 Chronicles 20:34. The treatise of the book of the kings, as to his sons and the many oracles against him and the rebuilding of the house of God. Behold, they are written in the treatise of the book of the kings. Then Amaziah, his son, became king in his place. 2 Chronicles 24:27. The Book of Records, Book of the Chronicles of Ahasuerus. Now, when the plot was investigated and found to be so, they were both hanged on a gallows, and it was written in the Book of the Chronicles in the king's presence. During that night, the king could not sleep, so he gave an order to bring the Book of Records, the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. Esther 2:23 and 6:1. The Acts of Solomon. Now the rest of the Acts of Solomon and whatever he did in his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the Acts of Solomon? 1 Kings 11:41. The sayings of Haggai, his prayer also, and how God was entreated by him, and all his sin, his unfaithfulness, and the sites on which he built high places, and erected the Asherim and the carved images, before he humbled himself. Behold, they are written in the records of the Haggai. 2 Chronicles 33:19. The Chronicles of David. Joab, the son of Zeruiah, had begun to count them, but did not finish. And because of this, wrath came upon Israel, and the number was not included in the account of the Chronicles of King David. 1 Chronicles 27:24. The Chronicles of Samuel, Nathan, Gad. Now the acts of King David, from first to last, are written in the Chronicles of Samuel the seer, in the Chronicles of Nathan the prophet, and in the Chronicles of Gad the seer. 1 Chronicles 29:29. Samuel's book. Then Samuel told the people the ordinances of the kingdom, and wrote them in the book, and placed it before the Lord. 1 Samuel 10:25. The records of Nathan the prophet. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon, from first to last, are they not written in the records of Nathan the prophet, and in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo the seer, concerning Jeroboam the son of Nebat? 2 Chronicles 9:29. The prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon, from first to last, are they not written in the records of Nathan the prophet, and in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo the seer, concerning Jeroboam the son of Nebat? 2 Chronicles 9:29. The treatise of the prophet Iddo. Now the rest of the acts of Abijah, and his ways and his words, are written in the treatise of the prophet Iddo. 2 Chronicles 13:22. The existence of a book can be inferred as well. This is clearly seen with several missing epistles. Paul's letter to the church at Laodicea. When this letter is read among you, have it also read in the church of the Laodiceans. And you, for your part, read my letter that is coming from Laodicea. Colossians 4:16. Since 3 earlier manuscripts do not contain the word at Ephesus, in Ephesians 1:1, some have speculated that the letter coming from Laodicea was in fact the letter of Ephesians. Apostolic fathers also debated this possibility. In Paul's first letter to Corinth, he predated that letter by saying, I wrote you in my letter not to associate with immoral people. 1 Corinthians 5:9. This could merely be a reference to the present letter of 1 Corinthians. Of all the books quoted, paraphrased, or referenced to in the Bible, the book of Enoch has influenced the writers of the Bible as few others have. Even more extensively than in the Old Testament, the writers of the New Testament were frequently influenced by other writings, including the first book of Enoch. It is not the purpose of this work to make judgments as to the validity or worth of the books of Enoch, but rather to simply put forth a meaningful question. Is not the non-canonical book that most influenced the thought and theology of the writers of the New Testament worth further research and contemplation? Before we continue in our study of the book of Enoch, there are several questions we must keep in mind. If a book is mentioned or quoted in the Bible, is it not worthy of further study? If it is worth investigating, is this the book of which the Bible speaks? What knowledge or insight does it add to our understanding of the Bible, or the men who wrote it? The book of Enoch was once cherished by Jews and Christians alike. It is read in certain Coptic Christian churches in Ethiopia. two versions of the Book of Enoch exist today. Most scholars date the first Book of Enoch to sometime during the 2nd century BC. We do not know what earlier oral tradition, if any, the book contains. 1 Enoch was considered inspired and authentic by certain Jewish sects of the 1st century BC and remained popular for at least 500 years. The earliest Ethiopian text was apparently derived from a Greek manuscript of the Book of Enoch. The original was apparently written in the Semitic language, now thought to be Aramaic. The first Book of Enoch was discovered in the 18th century. It was assumed to have been penned after the beginning of the Christian era. This theory was based upon the fact that it had quotes and paraphrases, as well as concepts found in the New Testament. Thus, it was assumed that it was heavily influenced by writers such as Jude and Peter. However, recent discoveries of copies of the book among the Dead Sea Scrolls found at Qumran prove the book was in existence long before the time of Jesus Christ. These scrolls force a closer look and reconsideration. It becomes obvious that the New Testament did not influence the Book of Enoch. On the contrary, the Book of Enoch influenced the New Testament. The date of the original writing upon which the 2nd century BC Qumran copies were based is shrouded in obscurity. Likewise, lost are the sources of the oral traditions that came to be the Book of Enoch. It has been largely the opinion of historians that the book does not really contain the authentic words of the ancient Enoch, since he would have lived several thousand years earlier than the first known appearance of the book attributed to him. However, the 1st century Christians accepted the Book of 1 Enoch as inspired, if not authentic. They relied on it to understand the origin and purpose of many things, from angels to wind, sun, and stars. In fact, many of the key concepts used by Jesus himself seem directly connected to terms and ideas in the Book of 1 Enoch. It is hard to avoid the evidence that Jesus not only studied the book, but also respected it highly enough to allude to its doctrine and content. Enoch is replete with mentions of the coming kingdom and other holy themes. It was not only Jesus who quoted phrases or ideas from Enoch. There are over 100 comments in the New Testament which find precedence in the first Book of Enoch, or 1 Enoch. Other evidence of the early Christians' acceptance of the Book of Enoch was for many years buried under the King James Bible's mistranslation of Luke 9:35, describing the transfiguration of Christ. And there came a voice out of the cloud saying, "This is my beloved Son, hear him." Apparently, the translator here wished to make this verse agree with a similar verse in Matthew and Mark. But Luke's verse in the original Greek reads, "This is my Son, the elect one," from the Greek ho eklegmenos, literally, the elect one. Hear him. The elect one is a most significant term, found 14 times in the Book of 1 Enoch. If the book was indeed known to the apostles of Christ, with its abundant descriptions of the elect one who should sit upon the throne of glory, and the elect one who should dwell in the midst of them, then the great scriptural authenticity is justly accorded to the Book of Enoch, when the voice out of the cloud tells the apostles, "This is my Son, the elect one," the one promised in the first Book of Enoch. The Book of Jude tells us in verse 14 that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied. Jude also, in verse 15, makes a direct reference to the Book of Enoch, 2:1, where he writes, "To execute judgment on all, to convict all who are ungodly." As a matter of fact, it is a direct, word-for-word quote. Therefore, Jude's reference to the Enochian prophecies strongly leans toward the conclusion that these written prophecies were available to him at that time. Fragments of 10 Enoch manuscripts were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. The number of scrolls indicate the Essenes, a Jewish commune or sect at the time of Christ, could well have used the Enochian writings as a community prayer book or teacher's manual and study text. Many of the early church fathers also supported the Enochian writings. Justin Martyr ascribed all evil to demons, whom he alleged to be the offspring of the angels who fell through lust for women, directly referencing the Enochian writings. Athenagoras, 170 AD, regarded one Enoch as a true prophet. He describes the angels who violated both their own nature and their office. In his writings, he goes into detail about the nature of fallen angels and the cause of their fall, which comes directly from the Enochian writings. Since any book stands to be interpreted in many ways, Enoch posed problems for some theologians. Instead of re-examining their own theology, they sought to dispose of that which went counter to their beliefs. Some of the visions in Enoch are believed to point to the consummation of the age in conjunction with Christ's second coming, which took place in AD 70, and the destruction of Jerusalem. This being the case, it should not surprise us that Enoch was declared a fake and was rejected by Hilary, Jerome, and Augustine. Enoch was subsequently lost to Western Christendom for over 1,000 years. Enoch's 70 generations was also a great problem. Many scholars thought it could not be made to stretch beyond the 1st century. Copies of Enoch soon disappeared. Indeed, for almost 2,000 years we knew only the references made to it in the Bible. Without having the book itself, we could not have known it was being quoted in the Bible, sometimes word for word by Peter and Jude. The Lord, having saved a people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed them that believed not, and angels that kept not their own principality, but left their proper habitation. He hath kept in everlasting bonds under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah, and the cities about them, in like manner, are set out as examples. Jude 5:7. For if God spared not the angels when they sinned, but cast them down into hell, and committed them to pits of darkness, to be reserved unto judgment. 2 Peter 2:4. To what extent other New Testament writers regarded Enoch as scriptural canon may be determined by comparing their writings with those found in Enoch. A strong possibility of influence upon their thought and choice of wording is evidenced by a great many references found in Enoch, which remind one of passages found in the New Testament. The Book of Enoch seems to be a missing link between Jewish and Christian theology, and is considered by many to be more Christian in its theology than Jewish. It was considered scripture by many early Christians. The literature of the Church Fathers is filled with references to this book. The early 2nd century apocryphal book of the Epistle of Barnabas makes many references and quotes from the Book of Enoch. 2nd and 3rd century Church Fathers like Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, Origen, and Clement of Alexandria all seem to have accepted Enoch as authentic. Tertullian, 160 to 230 AD, even called the Book of Enoch Holy Scripture. The Ethiopian Coptic Church holds the Book of Enoch as part of its official spiritual canon. It was widely known and read the first 3 centuries after Christ. This and many other books became discredited after the Council of Laodicea, and being under ban of the authorities, it gradually disappeared from circulation. In 1770, even called the Book of Enoch Holy Scripture. The Ethiopian Coptic Church holds the Book of Enoch as part of its official spiritual canon. It was widely known and read the first 3 centuries after Christ. This and many other books became discredited after the Council of Laodicea, and being under ban of the authorities, it gradually disappeared from circulation. In 1773, rumors of a surviving copy of the book drew Scottish explorer James Bruce to distant Ethiopia. He found the Book of Enoch had been preserved by the Ethiopian Church, which put it right alongside the other books of the Bible. Bruce secured not one, but 3 Ethiopian copies of the book and brought them back to Europe and Britain. In 1773, Bruce returned from 6 years in Abyssinia. In 1821, Richard Lawrence published the first English translation. The famous R.H. Charles edition was published in 1912. In the following years, several portions of the Greek text surfaced. Then, with the discovery of Cave 4 at Qumran, 7 fragmentary copies of the Aramaic text were discovered. Even in its complete form, the Book of Enoch is not one manuscript. It is a composite of several manuscripts written by several authors. Enoch and Noah each have pieces of the book ascribed to them, yet still today, the most complete text of the multifaceted book is the Ethiopian copy. The book consists of 5 distinct sections. 1 Enoch, chapters 1 through 36, the Book of Watchers. 1 Enoch, chapters 37 through 71, the Book of Parables, also called the Similitudes of Enoch. 1 Enoch, chapters 72 through 82, the Book of the Heavenly Luminaries, also called the Astronomical Book. 1 Enoch, chapters 83 through 90, the Dream Visions, also called the Book of Dreams. 1 Enoch, chapters 91 through 108, the Epistle of Enoch. The Book of the Watchers date from about 300 to 200 BC, and the latest part, Book of Parables, probably was composed at the end of the 1st century BC. Later, another Book of Enoch surfaced. This text, dubbed 2 Enoch or 2nd Enoch, and commonly called the Slavonic Enoch, was discovered in 1886 by Professor Sokolov in the archives of the Belgrade Public Library. It appears that just as Ethiopian Enoch, 1 Enoch, escaped the 6th century church suppression of certain texts in the Mediterranean area, so also did Slavonic Enoch survive by being propagated in another language long after the original form from which it was copied was destroyed or hidden. Specialists in the Enochian texts believe that the missing original from which the Slavonic was copied was probably a Greek manuscript, which itself may have been based on a Hebrew or Aramaic manuscript. The Slavonic text has evidence of many later additions to the original manuscript. Unfortunately, later additions and deletions of teachings considered erroneous rendered the text unreliable. Because of references to dates and data regarding certain calendar systems in the Slavonic Enoch, some claim the text cannot be earlier than the 7th century AD. Some see these passages not as evidence of Christian authorship, but as later Christian interpolations into an earlier manuscript. Enochian specialist R.H. Charles, for instance, believes that even the better of the 2 Slavonic manuscripts contains interpolations and is, in textual terms, corrupt. The last great book of the Enochian tradition is 3 Enoch, or the Hebrew Book of Enoch. 3 Enoch is a wealth of mystical knowledge. The book claims to be authored by Rabbi Ishmael, a highly respected and brilliant priest living between 90 and 130 AD. However, no fragments have been found dating earlier than around 400 AD. The book was written in Hebrew, but has a few Latin and Greek word and cognates. 3 Enoch has its roots in the Metatron tradition, which has Enoch ascending to heaven and being translated into the angel Metatron. He is then given authority over the angels and the earthly nations, much to the protests of the angelic host. The amount of mystical information, along with the angelology contained in the book, is unrivaled. Enoch is obviously a continuation and expansion of the Enochian traditions of 1 and 2 Enoch, which are drawn on for the story's foundation. The complete text of 3 Enoch had been very difficult to find. Usually, one finds only fragmentary sources here and there. These various Hebrew language fragments were brought together in a master work in 1928, done at Cambridge, England. Most information on 3 Enoch exists in forms available to scholars, but not to the general public. By reinterpreting, augmenting, and supplementing the Hebrew text with various sources and articles, an informative document suitable for the general public was produced. It is with great joy that the 3rd book of Enoch is presented in its entirety. In addition to the translations of the books of Enoch, notes on biblical references are included, showing how the book of Enoch contains various Old Testament sources, or how the book of Enoch was quoted, referenced, or was possibly used as a source document for New Testament writers. Author's commentary attempts to add insight and understanding within the text. In the 1st book of Enoch, biblical references are italicized and the chapters and verses noted. Notes and commentaries from the author are kept in plain text, leaving the bold text to be the book of Enoch. This layout was not continued throughout this volume and was done for 1 Enoch because of the large amount of information presented. In 2 Enoch and 3 Enoch, the flow is slightly different. Let us now proceed to the book of Enoch.